Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Environment and Performance Committee. My name one to receive apologies for absence and notification of any substitute members.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have apologies from Councillors Lena Savikian, Andy Izard and Patsy Marson, no substitute members. Thank you.
To receive declarations of interest in respect of any item on the agenda. Does any member of the committee wish to declare any interest in any item on the agenda? And to sign the minutes of the last meeting held on the 5th of September. Do members agree the minutes, please? Thank you. Item 4, to answer any written public questions. Are there any?
No questions, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. That concludes the preliminary items. We will now move into part 2 of tonight's agenda. The first report this evening is the annual joint scrutiny report, which is on page 5 of the agenda. And this will be presented by myself as I was a member of that group. I am aware that the portfolio holder, Councillor Anne Dorian, is also in attendance and would invite her to comment when I have presented the report. When the partnership was formed in October 2021, the approved business case was demonstrated. The approved business case demonstrated a number of opportunities for the South and East Lincolnshire Council's partnership. Progress on these identified opportunities, plus other key issues, form the basis of this annual joint scrutiny of the partnership. The report starts at page 9 of the agenda. Before the meetings commenced, we conducted a short questionnaire among all councillors and members of the corporate management team to canvass their views. Key themes that came from this questionnaire can be found at Appendix 3, page 17 of the agenda. The panel met 5 times, interviewed 11 witnesses, including leaders, senior staff and staff forum members, using questions based mainly on the key lines of inquiry. See Appendix 2, page 15. We discussed the key themes that came from the survey, along with key issues including ICT, recruitment and retention. We came up with 9 recommendations, which are on page 14 of the agenda. In each case, these will be discussed by the relevant scrutiny committee at each council before being sent to Cabinet or Executive for approval. As chair of this group, I feel strongly that item 4 on the recommendations is reviewed. We had 9 councillors on this committee. Sadly, due to work commitments, one member struggled to attend, and another was also having problems connecting to the internet at home, so could only attend once. So might I just say, perhaps think twice before you offer your services, but I also think any councillor that is remotely interested in this subject should be allowed to be inclusive of this group and not necessarily lay the responsibility on chair and vice chair of scrutiny groups. The other observation was from staff views and the working environment between the 3 councils. There is a vast difference in Boston's municipal buildings compared to SHDC and ELDC, and the facilities are of a lower standard than the other 2, largely due to the age of the building, although some staff now have the opportunity to work from home if they so wish. Recruitment and retention was discussed at great length. We did highlight that this needs to be monitored, but not always easy if a member of staff does not wish to say why they are leaving. It is concerning that we are continuing to lose experienced senior staff to other authorities, and I do hope the question is being asked why. This was also highlighted in Boston's peer review carried out 14th to 16th of May this year. Thank you. Councillor Doreen, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just a bit surprised on your last point there, actually. I don't recall the peer report commenting on staff turnover at all, actually, but I'll happily be corrected. I don't share your concern about staff turnover. I think that it's really good to see our members of staff moving on to bigger and better things and getting promoted posts elsewhere. And so I think that happens in the majority of councils, especially now that we have hybrid working and agile working policies. A fellow leader of another authority has one of his corporate management team works 200 miles away from their base. It's not something I would particularly advocate here, but I do think that I don't think our staff turnover is any worse than anywhere else. So thank you for making the recommendations. I hear what you say about the commitment required to undertake additional workload over and above what we already have, and I note that you report comments on capacity for of councillors as well as staff. In fact, the night I gave evidence, neither yourself nor Councillor Evans were present at the scrutiny meeting. So it does happen to everybody that for one reason or another, they're not able to attend a meeting due to personal commitments. But other than that, thank you for the work that the committee did, and I'm sure these recommendations will be taken forward in the appropriate way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doreen. Sadly, I couldn't make that meeting that night. It was the only one that I did miss. I think I was just suggesting that if you can't make meetings, perhaps you need to rethink about standing on these committees, because it makes the committee, when a committee is light, it's quite difficult on the other members. And you know, one guy basically had got no internet connection at home. Why would you even offer to sit on a committee? But thank you anyway. Do we have any other comments from the floor, please? Thank you, Councillor Gilbert.
Yeah, just a comment about the questions for leaders makes reference to the preparedness for the mayoral combined authority to ensure that services we deliver are enhanced. I just wonder what the leaders identified as the main areas of challenge for us as we move into this new combined mayoral model. Councillor Doreen was able to answer that as one of the leaders. What were considered to be the sort of presenting challenges in respect of the creation of this new mayoral combined model? I've read the document. I can see some challenges for us, but I wonder whether or not other challenges may or may not have been identified.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I think one of the biggest bones of contention for me, Councillor Gilbert, is the fact that we don't have a voice, that there are only 4 seats at the mayoral table for 7 districts. So at any one time, 3 districts won't be represented at all. And of the 4 seats, of the 4 people who get a seat, and it's not been decided yet, they don't have a vote. And so there's no voice, there's no vote. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges going forward. I think that we all must keep an eye out for the government white paper, which is due to be published next week. There was a leak of sorts published in the Times a week last Monday, which seems to suggest that government are very much looking at local government reorganisation, and there is a concern and a worry that they might actually get rid of district councils. So I think I'm not saying they will, I'm just saying that that's what people are worried about. And I think that if government were to go down that path, it could potentially take representation away from local people. It is a worry, really. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to that, I also think that the role that the mayor has in terms of economic regeneration and economic development, I think is quite concerning as well, given that a lot of that will impact on local districts who, as you quite rightly concluded, don't actually have a voice and therefore haven't got a strong position to advocate on behalf of their communities if something adverse is being proposed in our area.
Thank you, Councillor Gilbert. Any other comments on this report? Thank you, Councillor Austin.
Just thank you. If I may address it to the leader. On the other hand, okay, we haven't got a voice, but at least with the partnership, we've got that collective chance of being heard, haven't we, in our own way, because we've got greater lobbying power than we would have individually. So obviously it's too early to know, but we've obviously got to, between us, influence those who have got a voice from Lincolnshire. And that really is up to us collectively as a partnership, I think. But I don't know if you understand what I'm driving at. Because if we sort of sit there and say, oh, throw my toys out of the pram because we haven't got a voice, then we won't get heard. But if we can go about it in an adult way and constructively work with other people, and that's sometimes how you can get somewhere, isn't it?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I disagree with you, Councillor Austin. I think that having a vote is really, really important, you know, because your residents can come to you and lobby and lobby and lobby and ask you to vote one way, and it's entirely in your gift to vote any way you like. And so that lobbying goes on. Nobody's thrown the toys out the pram. Lobbying goes on extensively. You know, I've written to government about various things to lobby them to try and make changes that would be better for our residents. But I don't have a vote in Parliament. I've got no power or authority in Parliament. And the same goes for the mayoral combined authority. It's only the upper tiers that have a vote, and they will presumably, you know, they have 2 seats on the mayoral combined authority, and then along with the mayor, there will be 7 votes. But they, at the present time, as things stand, they're not representative of the politics of the whole council. So if the only people that have a vote are of the same political party, those people that have a different political outlook and a different political persuasion, I think, are disenfranchised. And that's the bit that I've really struggled with, Councillor Austin, and I have been very vocal about it. But at the end of the day, the 3 Conservative leaders and the Labour leader at that time voted to accept that deal that was on offer. So that we are where we are. I will never stop fighting for the people of Boston, because that's what we've been elected to do. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other comments on this? No. The recommendation is that the Environment and Performance Committee recommend this to be considered at the next Cabinet meeting. And I'd like a show of hands, please. All those in favour? Thank you. Our next item this evening is a presentation by our Assistant Director for Neighbourhoods, Victoria Burgess, on the Waste Services Delivery Model, and the portfolio holder, Councillor Callum Butler, will introduce this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. As I'm sure you are all aware by now, central government are mandating that all local authorities undertake the collection of food waste separately from general waste from April 2026 under the Environment Act of 2021. This will have a huge impact on our waste collection service, from vehicles to how we collect the waste. The cost of this will be offset by government funding initially. As we are still awaiting more clarification from central government, we thought it best to give you a presentation on the food waste proposal and where we currently are and what it will mean for residents and the council. I shall now hand over to Victoria Burgess to go through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Is that working? Sorry. Thank you. So yeah, thank you for your time. Thank you for your time this evening. So as Councillor Butler says, I'm just going to do a short presentation setting out the requirements for us for the Environment Act as it relates to waste services, because the Environment Act covers a number of other areas as well. But today we're here for waste services. A little bit about performance in Boston, some information around the project plan that we're working to at the moment, a little bit about governance, and then the timescales we're currently looking to in terms of delivering the requirements of the Act. So the Environment Act 2021 no, it's a presentation. There's no paper. Well, I can share as well afterwards. No problem with that. So the Environment Act introduced something called simpler recycling, and basically what that covers is provision of consistent collections of recyclable materials by all councils in the country. Pleased to say that in Lincolnshire, the current set of recyclable materials that we put in our blue bin here in Boston, they are consistent with simpler recycling, so that's positive. And the other thing that simpler recycling introduced is weekly food waste collections to all households. Also with simpler recycling came something called extended producer responsibility, and the small p there is because this is about packaging waste. So extended producer responsibility is changing the way that local authorities are being funded for the way that we collect and dispose of packaging. And that's packaging, whether it's in the residual waste stream, so that's the green bin, the recycling waste stream, which is your blue bin, and of course, litter collections, so any packaging waste that is in litter bins that we collect from. And the way that EPR will work is that we will, local authorities will be paid, be given a payment for the provision of efficient and effective services. So the idea being that the producers of packaging will be obligated to pay a fee to something called a scheme administrator, and then what comes out at the end of the calculator is a payment to local authorities for dealing with the collection and disposal of packaging waste. So it covers the county council as well as the collection authorities. So the reason that the Environment Act and the areas that focus on waste collections are in place are to meet the statutory targets and the government's net zero commitment. And the aspiration there is the 65% recycling target by 2035. And by 2042, we reduce the amount of waste we produce by 50%. So I just thought it would be helpful just to show this slide because it sets out a little bit more about what simpler recycling is. So simpler recycling is for all households, but all non-household municipal premises, so business waste, waste from schools, hospitals, etc. And it just covers England. And the reason that simpler recycling is in place is a number of reasons. So one is that it reduces confusion and makes recycling easier because there is a requirement for producers to label all their packaging with whether it can or cannot be recycled. It will improve recycling rates. It will enable us, well, enforce us to some degree to produce a higher quality recyclate. So what goes in our blue bin is a real good quality that the recycling processes can actually recycle. It's not contaminated.
It also helps to tackle environmental impacts of food and plastic waste. And also there's a real push to help grow the UK recycling industry. And also when we buy materials, the content, the recycled content is as high as it possibly can be. So the wheel, if you like, of simpler recycling is all to do with ensuring that the packaging waste that we collect as local authorities across the country, we're all recycling the same materials. So it doesn't matter where you live, the same materials are taken for recycling to end that confusion, that we're actually collecting good quality recyclate. And that means that the higher the quality, the more materials that can get reprocessed into something else. And of course, with food waste, it's about ensuring that the energy within that food waste is captured as a renewable energy, and also the nutrients that come from that can go as soil conditioners. And then the extended producer responsibility, moving forward, that packaging will be recyclable and labelled as you can recycle it or you can't, because you will know now that there's quite a lot of confusion around what you can actually put in your recycling and what you can't. And currently you will see on some packaging little sort of signs now saying, do not recycle at home, take these to a supermarket to recycle. But that will be much clearer moving forward. So that's simply recycling. So in terms of the government's timeline, so in 2024, the arrangements for food waste were set out. There's been an awful lot of consultation, and the results of the consultation was published, and the secondary legislation has come into force. So in 23-24, we have received some capital funding, new burdens funding for food waste. We've already received that, and that is to enable us to purchase vehicles and caddies in order to deliver food waste collections. In March 2025, non-household premises will have to recycle all waste streams. So that's businesses will have to recycle those. And there is also a requirement for businesses to have a collection of food waste. Not small businesses, larger businesses, but there is still a requirement for us to do that. So that obviously impacts on Boston because we provide a commercial waste collection. Later this year, and we're still waiting for further information, but local authorities are due to receive what's called transitional funding for food waste collections. So that transitional funding is to meet the costs of communications, engagement, everything you need to do to get ready for those food waste collections starting. And in 25-26, we will also receive the funding from extended producer responsibility for packaging waste. And it doesn't stop there, because in March 2026, we have to start collecting food waste from all households. And we will also, although we don't know what it is yet, in 2026-27, we will start receiving ongoing revenue funding, new burdens revenue funding for the cost of collecting food waste. And then looking forward to 2027, there will be a requirement for us to start collecting plastic film and flexible plastic. So things like plastic carrier bags, things like bags that loaves of bread come in, that sort of plastic that comes. But it's mandatory then for us to collect that on curbside. And then moving forward, the DEFRA have run consultations on recycling of waste electronic goods, so things were still coming. So I think the message is that there's a lot of change coming, and for the foreseeable future, that change is going to continue. So in terms of Boston Borough Council's performance for recycling, we currently recycle 33% of the waste we collect. So as you can see, that aspiration, the national target is much higher than that, and that's a challenge for all waste collection authorities. The good news for Boston is in terms of the quality of the recycling that we collect. So before we had that separate paper and card bin, the purple lidded bin, we were looking at sort of 29–30% contamination. 2023-24, as the paper and card collections came in, that reduced to 16%. And the last quarter we've received information on, which is Q1 of this year, that's come down to 11%. So the real positive is that all the recycling that we collect from Boston residents, the quality of that is massively improving, and therefore ticking that box for extended producer responsibility and ensuring that we're providing an effective and efficient recycling collection system. In terms of waste collected per household, the chart on the right-hand side just shows the rates across Lincolnshire, and Boston's on the left-hand side, and we're collecting around 700 kilograms per household of waste. And this is, you can see East Lindsey is one of the smallest there, and it's to do with the reduction in East Lindsey on the amount of residual waste that residents can put out. There's a smaller bin that gets put out there than in the other districts across Lincolnshire. So in terms of waste hierarchy, that's something moving forward that we will need to focus on, is how we start to reduce the amount of waste that our residents are producing. So across the whole of Lincolnshire, as you can see, there's a lot to do in terms of engagement and that sort of behaviour change around waste reduction and improving recycling. So in terms of actual food waste collections, so we received capital funding, the new burdens capital funding from DEFRA early this year, it's January I think it was this year. They've just over £700,000. The photographs I've shown you on there on the right hand side, the one at the top is what we call a separate food waste collection vehicle. These are smaller vehicles that just collect food waste. And the one below it is what we call a pod vehicle. So these are just examples, but there is a pod on the vehicle at the front of the vehicle on that photograph, and that pod at the front is for food waste, and then the container at the back, which is like the normal refuse collection vehicle that you see going around, that would be for the collection of either recycling or residual waste. So we think if we go with separate vehicles, we will need potentially up to 5 more, because we have to pass every house, every residential property in the district once a week. We will be procuring around 33,000 street caddies. So the street caddies is the one that you see on the photograph on the right hand side, with the black with an orange lid, and this is what gets presented at the curbside with the normal bins. The little bin above it, that's a kitchen caddy. It's like a silver colour, and the idea being that as residents have food waste, the food waste goes into that little silver bin, and then that gets taken out to the curbside bin, the street caddy, and then that's what we will collect as we go around. Some authorities have caddy liners, some choose not to, and what DEFRA have said is that there is no funding for that, and that's for us to decide moving forward what we want to do around that. So we'll be bringing more information forward around that. So in terms of the additional resource requirements, this is something like it always does when we look at changing or tweaking or adding waste collection services in, that it pretty much involves the rest of the whole of the council. So the communications team are absolutely key to the work that we do. And of course, with our colleagues in PSPS, we touch IT, customer contact, the HR service, and of course the finance teams. So we're very good at sharing. We include everybody in what we are trying to do. So in terms of governance, so it's a big project for all 3 councils in the partnership, But we set up a few months ago, quite a while ago now, actually, the Waste Improvement Programme Board. And this is something that looks at this whole project across the 3 councils. And this slide just sets out how the Waste Improvement Programme Board feeds in to the Communities Project Board and the senior leadership team in the council, and of course then through to the committee structure and cabinet exec board decision making across the 3 councils. And the pillars, the 8 pillars, if you like, below that, I'll just give a quick run round of what each of those pillars are. So I sort of head up the operations delivery one, and that's the team across the councils that lead the operational planning and the logistics, how we're actually going to deliver this and roll it out across the 3 councils. ICT, obviously developing the back office systems, and the way we work now is that we have in-cab technology in the vehicles that links straight to the work packs that the crews do every day. So of course ICT is absolutely now become an integral part of the way we all work. So we've got a customer contact team that obviously we massively need to ensure that we have real strong customer engagement, and that our colleagues in PSPS are fully aware of what we're doing so that they can inform anybody that contacts them. And of course HR is there to support the changes required, because there are changes for our teams, for our crews through all of this as well. The finance teams have been playing a key part in a lot of the financial modelling through the 3 councils. And of course, our assets team are there supporting the assets infrastructure and any considerations for depots, because obviously as number of vehicles go up, then we've got impacts on our operating licenses and our depot capacity. And I mentioned before, the communication strategy is absolutely key. And of course, we've got a legal pillar there who are ensuring that across the 3 councils we make sure we're compliant with everything from a legal perspective. So we do have, you'll be pleased to know, we do have a project plan. And I haven't put the whole thing on here because it's pretty huge, but I've just split down the key areas there. So we're currently the area highlighted in red at the strategic assessment stage. So where we are at the moment with that is we have some consultants that are doing some work across the 3 councils for us, looking at whether for Boston it's right that we move forward with that separate food waste collection vehicle, or do we go with that pod vehicle, because there are big decisions in terms of how we replace our fleet. So what we want to make sure is that whichever collection system we look at moving forward, it provides the best value for money for Boston and enables us to provide the best service we possibly can. Then we come through the decision making side. So that's about getting that authority to introduce these collections. We then hit, I suppose, the real work where we're actually designing the service, so that designing the rounds, making sure that we've got all our supporting policies, making sure that ICT needs are there from the website through to the vehicles. We've got to procure the vehicles. We've got long lead times for those. And then we've got the mobilisation, where we actually get, if we need to recruit more staff, we get them in. We make sure all our health and safety requirements are there, training, and delivering all those 33,000 containers. Well, it'll be 66,000, won't it? Because everyone will have 2 containers. The communications will start literally from decision right the way through the rollout of this. And then, of course, what we always do is we do some monitoring evaluation at the end to make sure that we are collecting data, recording any complaints, and evaluating and improving the services as we move through. So once we get the information back from the consultants, we will be able to advise what the collection method will be moving forward. And we've been working on that for a few months. It's a big piece of work. An awful lot of data goes into that. And we're due to get that any time now, so we'll get that financial modelling of the collection options, and then we can agree a strategy, including any need, if there is, for any additional depot space. In November, we were due to have confirmation of what the transitional funding was for implementing the food waste service. We haven't received that yet. We know that it won't be backdated, so those authorities that have already introduced food waste collections won't get any funding for what they have introduced. The current trajectory, sorry, the next line is about the PEPR model payments. So we've received those just this last couple of weeks. We've received what those model payments will be, and then we will, but they won't actually get to us until the end of next year. January 2025, we'll be looking at that cabinet decision on food waste, and depending then on what the financial impact will be, is whether it meets the threshold to go to a council decision. If that's required, that's something we will do then. And then in February, we start with getting the vehicles, getting the caddies, making sure that all the system changes are coming through. April 2025 is the date for us to start bringing in commercial food waste collections. So that's a piece of work that we're working on now to ensure that we can deliver that to the businesses that currently use the council for its commercial waste collections. And then the plan then is in September to start 2025 to start mobilisation of how we're going to deliver this in March, April 2026, when collections will begin. And my assumption at the moment is that we'll probably phase those collections in, because it's proven to be the best way of achieving collections for everybody. But that's something, you know, that we'll continue to look at as we move forward. So I hope that that gives you a sort of a brief run over of what we're working on. Clearly, there is a bit of information yet that we don't have the answers to, and absolutely, I'll come back and have another. If you're happy to have me, I'll have another, update for you on where that will land. But obviously, happy to take any questions if anyone's got any at the moment.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Very interesting talk there. Has anybody got any questions? Stuart Evans, I think you have.
Thank you, Victoria. Can I just make sure I heard you right? Did you say that businesses in 2025 they must recycle all their materials? Is that effectively doing away with their green bin?
So the requirement for businesses is that they are given a collection of the same recycling materials that residents have. So metals, plastic, paper card, the same types of materials. So it's consistent across businesses. So those companies that collect business waste will have to offer that collection. The requirement for businesses to separate that out. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I didn't realise that wasn't the case now.
Yeah. Thank
you.
Councillor Gilbert.
Yes, thank you very much. Just a couple of points. The collection of food waste, we know from our experience of the purple and blue bins that there are often contaminations with those bins, which result in the local authority and ourselves not actually taking the bins away. Sometimes they're sitting on streets for quite some considerable time before they are removed or they're emptied. Obviously, with food waste, we've got a particular problem in the sense that, contamination or putrefaction could adversely impact on neighbourhoods. And I'm just wondering to what extent that has been considered and what arrangements there may be to remove any contaminated or putrefying waste, should there be the need to do that. And the second issue is about the width of some of our roads. I don't know whether it's still the case. I'm sure you can confirm one way or the other. but there used to be a narrower freighter that we used to get down places like James Street and round Oxford Street and Edwin Street. Do we still have a narrower freighter, and will we be using narrower freighters to enable this service to be undertaken?
Thank you. So all the refuse collection vehicles we have now are narrower than the standard. And the reason we do that, and we do that across pretty much the whole of Lincolnshire now, is that they can access more areas. But in Boston, there is I call it the baby refuse collection vehicle. It's a really small one. You'll have seen it going around. And yes, we still do have that. And there will always be those properties that are just harder to reach than others. And of course, we need to make sure that we can access them. In terms of the putrefied waste, I haven't heard that for a long time, that phrase. So yeah, it's a concern, isn't it? And I think, you know, it's something that these are small bins. They're left on the street, like our current bins now. But there are a number of authorities that already do this. So what we're doing all the time is learning from those authorities that have been doing it for a long time. But I think that's part of when we sort of know what the collection method's going to be, what vehicle we're going to have, then that will be part of that huge communication engagement strategy. And of course, there'll be policies that we'll need to look at as to what we do about you know, contamination. But contamination of food waste is slightly different to the others, because it's the food waste that contaminates the dry recycling rate. Yeah. So the hope is that if anything is contaminating the blue bin with food waste, that food waste gets moved into the caddy. And I think the difficulty we have as collection authorities is 99% of residents will present a recycling or the blue bin every week when they need to. And I think the unknown to some degree with food waste is that there's not that requirement to. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the other authorities, account for those properties that don't actually present constantly, yet we still have to pass them.
Thank you, Councillor Austin.
Thank you. Very interesting, and probably by having held fire on this a little bit, we're not jumping in too quickly, because we can see the pitfalls that other places have had. I mean, I think from my knowledge, I think South Kesteven has been doing some food waste recycling for a long time, but of course everything will have got more sophisticated since then. And I know where our daughter is in Northampton, she has to do food waste recycling. But so all these sort of things perhaps are to our benefit. The one thing, though, we haven't commented on, and that's something that does concern me, is in trying to encourage households to reduce their food waste recycling, because there is still this tendency in this area, particularly, I think, to buy more than you need. You know, one particular supermarket does it, buy one, get one free, etc., etc. And how much of that, honestly, is a saving financially, and how much goes to waste in the end? So the public education, I think, is going to be very important, isn't it? I welcome this move, and it's going to be. Let's hope that it all goes as we would like to, as presumably a lot then goes to anaerobic digesters, doesn't it? And I start to get a little bit out of my depth with them. Interestingly, but I have to say I have pulled out of it, which committee. I'm trying to think which committee it's Environment and Economy that I'm on at LCC. On Thursday of this week, we're invited to go up to Hemswell, where they are doing what's the word for the place that
It's the digester.
biogas, yes.
Yeah.
But I have declined this. It's just something I just physically am not quite ready for at the moment, because it's a long way up to Hemswell and a long way back again, plus 2 hours walking around. But I shall, with interest, get the feedback from other members of that committee. And I think there is someone else from Boston besides me who is on that committee. But I'm sorry, it's escaped me who it is now. Okay, well, thank you, and I look forward to this in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Welbury.
Thank you. It's very interesting. It's a huge undertaking, isn't it? My God. I've got a few questions. I mean, I've got lots, but I'll keep it brief. Communal bins. How are you going to collect waste from flats and people who have to use a communal bin for the food waste? You're having a super big bin.
So, well, the problem is the weight. But there are communal food waste bins that aren't the same size as a communal residual waste bins that we have out there. But yeah, there are smaller ones, about 140 litre ones. But yeah, the bigger they are, the heavier, because obviously food waste is probably the heaviest thing that we collect.
So you have more than one then per, you've got a compound at the moment, haven't you, with several large?
In some areas, yeah.
Yeah, so you'll have more than one food waste bin for which is problems in itself, really, isn't there?
Yeah, and we'll make sure that there's enough capacity, and I think some of that intelligence, if you like, will come as we go through the phasing introduction of it. Yeah.
And I guess when you put it in, you can't get it out again. You can't get the food waste out. It goes in and then it shuts in, does it? Or am I just getting too technical?
Well, some do. There's a whole load of different ways of doing it. So some can do that. But obviously it's about stopping stuff that shouldn't be going in there, going in as well. Yeah. And that's always the challenge. So yeah, that's part of the work that we'll be doing around the mobilisation of it. And when we purchase those, that's part of the consideration that we'll have, yeah. And
then you mentioned the scheme administrator. Is that a private body or is that a government body?
So it's they've been appointed. In fact, there's a temporary, if you like, scheme administrator in. But yeah, it's not a private company, but it's an independent body, if you like.
Yeah, it's not a government body. It's
no. Yeah.
And with the government house building policy set to sort of skyrocket, really, you've got those kind of challenges of an ever increasing households.
Yeah.
And then you've got to reduce the waste. Have you had to rethink your policies in line with the government change in policy?
I mean, that's always the one thing about the waste service is that it never gets less, because households never reduce, they grow, and we have to grow with it. I think the challenge for us is that in terms of the communication, Councillor Austin's point about trying to have residents reduce the amount of waste that they're putting out. And we've got to make sure that we can have a service that enables people to capture as much recyclate as they can out of that green bin and move it into the blue bin. So I think there will be a lot of work around engagement, but obviously this is a national initiative. So one of the things we've been doing through communication with DEFRA is making it clear that we need national communications, because we're all doing it together.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh well, good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Albury. Councillor Pryke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got two questions. First, on food waste. Obviously, the rest of the country will be moving at the same should be moving at the same pace as us. And there will be national educational support because publicity will be shared across different areas. I know that when food waste was introduced, food waste collection was introduced in other local authority areas, there are additional things like subsidised compost bins and extended opening hours at household waste recycling centres. Do you know if anything like that is on the cards for Lincolnshire? Because all of the district councils in Lincolnshire, as it were, are in the same boat together on this.
Yes, so the obviously we're part of the Lincolnshire Waste Partnership, and a lot of the work that's been done is done in across county. So all the districts discuss with county how we're going to move these forward. There hasn't been any discussion around extending the household waste recycling centre opening times as part of this, and in terms of, sorry, I've forgotten your first point. The compost bins, yeah. So we used to have a county-wide home composter scheme, and that was in place. And that's something that we will be looking at in terms of the whole of Lincolnshire, whether it's subsidised or not. But also with when the information around food waste starts to be rolled out, what we will, the information that will be going out will be that in your food waste bin, things like chicken carcasses and, small bones that you wouldn't put in a compost bin can go out as well. So there's definitely room for both, as part of that. Yeah.
Presumably, education stuff will be pointing that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
10 times a month or whatever.
Yeah.
The message gets through.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think the thing what we've learned from, when we rolled out the purple lidded bin, which to be honest has been a real success in terms of that improvement in contamination rates. But I think we've at Boston we have engaged really well with some really hard to reach groups as well. There's an awful lot of comms material that have been developed that that we've learnt from, and we'll again roll out. When we roll out this, we'll be using those same techniques to do that.
My other question revolves around the huge difference between Boston and East Lindsey, the volume of waste that goes. And I'm wondering where East Lindsey residents take their stuff. I'm sure they're not taking it to their household waste centres themselves. Is it all down to sort of nudge theory and nudge practices by giving people smaller bins, therefore they don't throw as much stuff away? Are their houses and flats filling up with guff?
No, well, the smaller bin, the 180 litre residual bin, was introduced in 2009, in East Lindsey. So it's been there for a long time. And I think the reason that worked as well as it did was because there was a huge amount of engagement with residents and really understanding what the needs were and what the barriers were, and also getting the message across again about reducing the amount of waste, thinking about what you buy, and the amount of packaging that we have to deal with now, which is what the extended producer responsibility payments are about, is trying to reduce that. So it's not just about making the packaging more recyclable, it's actually reducing the amount of packaging that is coming with products. So I think over time that will help residents reduce the amount of waste they produce. But yeah, certainly there was an awful lot of behaviour change initially back then.
Thanks for that. A lot of residents say to me, and I'm sure to colleagues as well, we hardly ever fill our bins now because we've got so many bins and we can put the stuff into different places. And a lot of people, as Councillor Gilbert has pointed out in committee before, have got too many bins for the amount of space they have to put them in. I know you have a system of replacing bins that get broken, burnt or whatever else. have you thought about offering smaller bins to people when a replacement is needed, or allowing people to opt for smaller bins so that their larger bin can go somewhere where it's more needed?
So there's a project we're just working on at the moment, looking at the bins that are that are around. We've done it in the market, around the marketplace, but also looking at what other alternatives we can provide to help improve the street scene, for one, but also to ensure that it's easy as possible to recycle, and the easier we make it, the more likely it is that we're going to have people using the system. So yeah, there's a project on that's ongoing, well, just about to start really, that we're looking at exactly that. Yeah.
One thing I thought of particularly is older people, single person households rarely fill their bins now, the big bins that they have, and they could perhaps be the first ones to be given the option of downsizing.
Yeah, and certainly there are instances where people share a bin. They will share it because they're not going to fill a single person. Maybe is not going to fill a bin like that, but yeah, they can share if they want to.
Councillor Butler, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back on Councillor Austin's point about the amount of food waste that's deposited. We're hopeful that when the food waste is put separate from all the other waste, hopefully residents will go, oh my God, how much food am I wasting each week? And we'll hopefully start to cut down. I completely agree with you that the supermarkets and shops in general do these frivolous 2 for 1, 3 for 2 offers, and it just encourages waste. And I'm pretty certain, Vic will correct me if I'm wrong, that government are looking at ways of reducing the offers as such to reduce that wastage.
Thank you. Councillor Drayton.
Yes, it was a lovely presentation. The only thing that hasn't been mentioned is vermin. With food waste and with rubbish, right? Have you spoken to any pest controls, how, in case we get an infestation, because people don't stick to the rules, and have you got anything in place to sort that out?
So when we've spoken to other councils that have this collection already, that doesn't tend to be a problem. And I think at the moment the food waste is in the green bin, and it's sat there for 2 weeks. So the smaller street bins, they have like a catch on them, if you like. So if you put the handle up, it locks the lid down.
Right.
So, and I take your point, so foxes or whatever can't actually get into the bin. But yeah, we're having to learn a lot from the areas that are doing it. Right. But in terms of pest control, we may get called to all sorts of areas now where there may be problems with vermin, and we just do, there's procedures in place to deal with anything like that anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else got any questions? Councillor Walbury.
I run a business, and as part of the climate levy and an end user for packaging, I have to pay a tax. And I have a scheme administrator who I do a buyout so that I can lower my tax level, the amount that I have to pay to the government. Is there a possibility for council for the partnership to do that with the scheme administrator? Can you spread your waste over the partnership like we in private business can do between companies?
Yeah, no, there's nothing like that. As part of it, the councils are sovereign
Yeah, I was just asking, is it's a private company? I thought
Yeah.
it might be this similar kind of
Yeah.
setup to the one that private enterprise can actually tap into.
Yeah, no, I'm afraid not.
Thank you, Councillor Welbury. I'm just a bit intrigued as to how you're going to encourage people to use this. And listening to people that live in different counties, they're saying, right, we've got this food bin, but we're not using it. So how are you going to encourage them to put the food waste in the right bin?
Well, I think that's all absolutely down to the communication strategy. So what the government will be doing nationally, and linking it to the climate change agenda, and that's a difficulty, isn't it? That we can't force anybody to use it. But the key will be in trying to make the behaviour change so that the benefits of food waste going into anaerobic digestion, as opposed to the energy from waste plants, are really, really clear, so that decision can be taken by residents, and they make that little bit more effort, I think, to try and achieve those aims. And to some degree, it's the same now with recycling.
Yeah, thank you for that. Would the bins be emptied once a week? My concern again is you've got this small white bin in your kitchen in the height of summer. How many people are going to want to retain that white bin in their property? I'm not saying. I'm just inquiring as to how this is going to actually work. Did you want to come in, Councillor Butler? Okay.
Yeah. So on a daily basis in your kitchen, you'll put your food waste into a smaller bin, and then tip that outside into the larger bin that's locked down. So it's up to the person in the kitchen, as to how often and whether they want to do that.
And so, how regularly would you have the larger bin emptied?
We have to empty it weekly. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Butler.
I'm still on. Thank you, Chair. I was just going to add that we know that not everybody will use this scheme. My nan, for example, 87 years old, she puts everything in her compost bin. She's done that for years. She chucks it on the garden, and then she self-sufficient as it was, like the good life. And I'm sure there's many people who will still do that.
Councillor Scoot.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, there are restrictions at the moment on what we can recycle in the purple and the blue bins. Are there going to be any restrictions on what food we can recycle?
No. It's really interesting when you go to the plans, because it can cope with pretty much everything and anything. I take your point, Councillor Austin, about it being a long trip, but it's really quite interesting to go and see it actually happen in front of your eyes, if you like.
Thank you. I think we've probably exhausted food waste, but thank you very much for your in-depth report. It was very interesting, and we just notes and comments have been noted. So we'll provide the committee's feedback. Thank you anyway. If you feel that you don't want to stay, you can go. Yeah. I know you've got a long journey home. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item of business, which is the Q1 performance report on page 19. This will be presented by the portfolio holder, Councillor Anne Dorian, supported by our Insights and Transformation Manager, Suzanne Rolfe. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it feels a bit funny being here with the performance indicators for Q1. It should have come in September, but I think your meeting was cancelled. But it's funny for me because I'm taking Q2 report on Thursday to Cabinet. So there have been some changes since last year. For example, we've dropped the planning extensions measure as it wasn't useful, and we've added in some new measures. We also have some off-log measures, which they're still under development. We're still waiting for government to decide what they want to measure and what they don't. And in response to comments from your last meeting, Madam Chair, we've made improvements to the formatting of the report. So we've split the target and trend measures to make the difference clearer, and we've sorted them by priority. That's explained in the covering report and at the top of the appendices. We've added additional commentary for the HR measures to provide more context for absence and turnover, and they've also been changed to quarterly measures rather than year to date, so that the trend is easier to track over time. And the staff turnover figure itself has been amended to show voluntary turnover. The traditional figure, including fixed term contracts, for example, is still included in the commentary. The majority of the measures are on target. However, you will find 3 red measures, and the commentary provides the context for those red measures. And if I just go through them for you, the first one is the occupancy of industrial units, which was only just shy of 86% against a target of 100%. And that represented at that time 4 units which were vacant at the end of Q1, but they were being actively marketed. The DSARs, the data subject access requests, only 60% were responded to within timescale against a target of 100%. However, that was because of an extensive volume of requests in Q1. I think there were 5 in total, Madam Chair. And that is a horrific piece of work to do, because what that means is you have to find every document in the building with someone's personal information on it, usually their name. But that is being actively managed by our data protection officer. And the last one that was a red was a housing benefit new claims, and the figure for speed of processing at the end of the month was 30 days against a target of 25. However, for June itself, it was down to 22 days. So it had turned a corner there, Madam Chair. It was positive, and we will keep an eye on that for Q2. So that's the end of my report, Madam Chair. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorian. Any questions? Councillor Austin.
Through your chair, we only own one shop, which we got as a bad debt provision, and that is let at the moment. So they were industrial units, Councillor Austin. I believe now that only 2 are vacant, so it's been actively managed. No, well, you go, Suzanne. If you want. Well, I'm happy to say that it would be the sheer volume, Councillor Austin. As I'm just trying to explain, excuse me. When someone makes a data subject access request, it's a free request. They don't pay any money. And what you're doing is you're asking for the organisation who you make the access request to for every piece of documentation that has your name on it. And you can drill down and say, if it was yourself, you would say, I want everything with Alison Austin on it. Or if anyone's referred to me as AA, or as anyone has referred to me as, when you were the mayor, for example, as the mayor. And it's a huge piece of work to do. And then after the GDPR legislation came into being, what organisations had to do then was to redact everybody else's information that might be on the document. So if people have sent an email to you about you or receive one from you, we'd have to find all those emails, but redact everyone else who might be on the email chain, or redact everybody else's name who was mentioned in the email. So it is an unbelievably huge volume of work, and I have full and utter confidence in our data protection officer. He's very, very agile. He's very knowledgeable about the law and all the legislation surrounding GDPR. But he has got a very small team to work with. I think there's only 3 in total. So so that's all it was, Councillor Austin. Thank you, Chair. Did you want, sorry, excuse me, Councillor, did you want to add? You might have more.
Just want to also explain that if they are delayed, then he does write to the person who's requested it and explains exactly what's going on. So they don't just not get a response on time, they get an explanation. Yeah, that's to do with the way that it's recorded. So sometimes the overpayment will be in a different quarter to when it's recovered. So it is often like that. What we're trying to show, and over time, we'll be able to show the trend, which will make a real big difference. At the moment, we haven't got enough numbers yet to see what it's showing. But yeah, it's a strange measure.
Councillor Gilbert.
Yes, thank you very much. Can I just move on to the performance indicators with the trend data? Just look, I've got 2 or 3 questions that relate to that. The first one, just chronologically, which is on page. It says smart about it. I'm not very smart at all. Lost my page. Anyways, properties improved by local authority intervention. And that's I can't see the page for 37. Thank you very much indeed. I've lost my place. Yeah, page 37. I just wonder, that seems to have declined significantly since Q1 to Q1 this year. I just wonder if there's any particular explanation for that.
Thank you, Chair. It's on page 38 on my document, but if it's 37 on others.
Yeah, it's 38. Yeah.
Yes, we've discussed this, Councillor Gilbert. Thank you for identifying that. It's a measure that we are not happy with as a cabinet, and quite simply, we haven't had a lot of focus on improving properties through intervention. We're acute to it now. We want it to improve. We also have linked this to empty properties that aren't being used for a substantial period of time, and we have tasked the team with remedying this and bringing something forward that will make that measure look very different as the year progresses. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you. That's reassuring to hear. And then my next question relates to fly tipping. Generally, and specifically, the numbers here seem to be in decline. Performance seems to be in decline generally. I just wonder again whether there's any particular explanation for a decline in the number of prosecutions concluded in the quarter, and why there's a decline in the number of FPNs issued for fly tipping. Generally, that's on page 40. I've got the right page there.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Gilbert. This is another measure that Cabinet aren't happy with. I can explain some of it though, and some of it, or perhaps most of it, was linked to the Kingdom contract not being serviced as well as it should have been. We were down on the numbers of enforcement officers that they were providing, and we have actually, I know Christian might want to come in here, but we have asked Christian to, I know that he's re-looked at the contract very recently to tighten that up. You know, for instance, they're supposed to provide X number of enforcement officers, but there was no sanction if they didn't. You know, and when we discovered this, we said, well, it's just not good enough. You know, exactly. It's contract management stuff, and we've given Christian a very clear steer going forward as to how we want that contract to be managed. If I could reassure your scrutiny committee, Madam Chair, that the fly tipping collection rates have improved. Fly tipping measure by measure is coming down, and I think that's partly the collection, partly the education programme that Councillor Butler's overseen. It's a perennial problem. It's a horrible problem, but we are working really hard, and he suffers a lot of flack sometimes on social media, and it's really unfair when people have a go at him, because if they could see how hard he was working, I think they'd be quite ashamed. But yes, I take your point, Councillor Gilbert, and I hope to see that trend measure improve greatly this year.
Thank you.
Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could ask Councillor Dorian, when Councillor Austin asked where the industrial units were, I didn't catch the answer.
I didn't give an answer.
That's probably why.
Yeah.
Whereabouts are they then?
I don't know.
Fair enough.
Any further questions? Councillor Bright.
Thank you, Chair. Again, on the trends bit, page 37, the number of verified rough sleepers seem to go up quite dramatically in the first quarter. I don't expect Councillor Doran to know exactly why. We could probably ask our housing team to tell us why they think that has happened. A lot of concern has been expressed elsewhere, particularly in Lincoln, about the effect on rough sleepers and crime of the early release of prisoners by the government. The first wave was in September and the second wave was in October, and it seems there's going to be another wave because prisons are still overcrowded, or too many people are being sent to prison for the places available. And so the government, the new government, is likely to extend the programme announced by the previous government. I don't know whether we can take any preparatory measures for that sort of thing, but rough sleeping does appear to have increased in a number of other areas because of that. I don't know anything about crime related to that, but I would hope that Boston would be able to help as many people as possible who get put out of jail with nowhere to live, basically.
That's clearly a comment, but I don't think we're able to answer that suggestion. So what are you suggesting? Have you got some ideas or?
Thank you, Chair. I have to say, Councillor Pryke, that knowing the rough sleeping team as I do, they're the most dedicated, devoted bunch of officers you could ever wish to meet. They're out on the streets at 5 AM looking for rough sleepers, trying to help rough sleepers. And with your experience, Councillor Pryke, you must know that there are a large cohort of rough sleepers who either don't want to engage, they have serious, complex substance misuse issues, usually more than one. They have serious, complex mental health issues. And some of them don't have any recourse to public funds either. So even though we have got this great team of people out there working, there is a limit sometimes on what they're able to do, because either people won't engage or they're not entitled to engage. But we do what we can. And I don't know that they can do any more. Thank you, Madam Chair.
If I could come back on that, I wasn't making a comment or any criticism of the team. I have worked with them, with people who have been living underneath holly trees in Curtin Churchyard, for example, fairly recently. And I know the work they do and I welcome it very much. I'm concerned that there may be a surge of other people released from prison early who will not have accommodation and may put further strain on our resources. And I don't know whether we can do anything to prepare for that, but I would like to think that Boston is aware of the possibility and giving some thought to what could be done. Thank you, Councillor Dorian.
Madam Chair, through you, I will ask the officers if there's any correlation between the early release of prisoners and the increase in homelessness. I will ask the team to do that work and make sure it's sent through to your committee. I'm not aware that there's any evidence for that. I'm sure there'll be anecdotal evidence. I don't know if there's any statistical reliable evidence that we could actually use as a springboard to any piece of work, but I will ask the team to look at it. Thank you.
Councillor Gilbert.
It's just an observation, really. In my past employment, I worked with offenders and people being released from custody, and at that point, it was the case that everybody who was released from custody found themselves under the supervision of the probation service. That requirement has now, I think, been lifted, probably to compensate or cope with the fact that there's significantly more people being released from custody. But the probation service used to have a responsibility to notify local authorities of anybody who was being released homeless. And those individuals, of course, had a responsibility to present themselves to the local authority as homeless. So, I mean, it may be a place to start to chat to the probation service about whether they still undertake that role and still notify us if someone's coming out of custody without anywhere to go.
Councillor Austin.
I was only just going to comment, if I may, that of course what got the publicity quite recently, wasn't it, was, am I right in thinking, was the number of protesters about something, something up north, and I'm sorry, I've forgotten what the event was, but wherever there were those riots, and they put all those people into jail and release everyone else, not everyone else, sorry, exaggeration, but released a lot of people earlier who then, well, had to join the rough sleepers, unfortunately. That's just a very brief sort of casual summary of how I vaguely remember it.
Thank you both for presenting those reports. Thank you. Finally, we have the work programme on page 49. Christian, are there any updates, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If I may, just before I talk about the work programme, I'll just quickly come back to Councillor Dorian's response to Councillor Gilbert. I've just looking at the stats on remembering, obviously, that you were reporting Q1 performance. I've just looked back at the fly tipping stats for this year, so from April through to November this year. So that's 8 months, and 6 out of those 8 months, fly tipping was lower than the same when compared to the same months previously. So I think we are seeing quite a significant impact on the council's approach to tackling fly tippings that's starting to be evident in the figures. And then just coming back to contract performance, rightly so, we have clamped down and sought to engage Kingdom to deliver improved performance, and we introduced a raft of new KPIs through a contract variation in October. And I think when you see the performance now for this current quarter compared to the one you've just heard from this evening, you'll see a big step change in how they're performing and with the results they're achieving. So watch this space for when we report Q2 and Q3, etc. So thank you. So just the work programme. So yes, there are a few changes just to inform members on when looking at the published work programme in the agenda pack. So first of all, the market delivery plan and policy review has been confirmed for the 11th of April meeting, so that's not currently shown in the work programme. The Destination Lincolnshire Management Plan is anticipated for EMP in February. Again, that's not in the work programme because it's sorry, it is in the work programme for the 11th of February, but it's pending confirmation. So we're just waiting confirmation on that. Members will note that the sponsorship policy has been scheduled, but that's still pending a date for scheduling. So we hope to be able to update you further at the next meeting. Just in terms of members will be aware that currently there's an ongoing partnership scrutiny task and finish group that's been convened to look at the partnership Envirocrime and enforcement contract. Again, this was due to report back to this parent committee in February 2025. However, to accommodate all of the meetings with the witnesses as part of this programme, that has been deferred. That report has been deferred to the meeting of the 29th of April, and that's just been agreed with the chair of this committee and with the portfolio holder just this evening. So that will come through in the work programme or be added to the work programme for the April 29th of April meeting. And then just finally, our sister committee, the Corporate Community Committee, requested a report on the town centre at its last meeting. That request has been tabled to our chairman. However, the exact remit of the report needs to be clarified before it can be brought forward to this committee. So this committee, Madam Chairman, needs to agree what it wants to see from this report to allow officers to construct it and bring it forward. So I'm not sure whether that's a task you want to do this evening or one that you want to discuss perhaps outside of this meeting or at a later date.
Yeah, are we thinking of a joint scrutiny on this, or are they just a CNC looking to do this then?
I'd need some help from you, Karen, I think, on this, because I've not been directly involved in this conversation.
It came up at the last meeting of CNC when they were going through their work programme, and a couple of members mentioned they'd like to have a look at the town centre and any improvements over the last sort of 18 months in respect of littering and various things. They weren't very detailed on it because the chairman quite rightly said that's actually an EMP matter, not a CNC matter. So the committee just agreed to refer it to yourself to see if your committee wanted to take it forward. You might not want to. It's entirely up to you. But it came up from CNC with a referral through to yourself.
Well, it'd be nice if we had some ideas of what they want us to look at, wouldn't it? Councillor Gilbert.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I mean, it sounds like a good idea for a joint committee. I mean, one thing I'm particularly interested in is the effects of the long-term plans for the town centre, including the PE21 project, the purchase of B&M and the purchase of Crown House, and the plans that we have in place to take those projects forward. One of the things that struck me about the Crown House purchase was the fact we were going to knock it down. And given the amount I believe we paid for it, that did seem to be quite an expensive way of creating what in a sense will be a car park for quite some considerable period of time before we hopefully have enough funding to build something on it as well. And in relation to the other plans, there are environmental challenges associated with those, particularly in respect of maintaining green areas and flower beds and all that sort of thing. Creating the eco-diversity is a good thing, but creating eco-diversity throws up challenges, and those challenges are in the town centre. So I'd very much support a joint scrutiny committee to look at everything to do with PE21 from purchase all the way through to the plans that are in place at the moment.
It's not that I get what you're saying. That's not actually the town centre, and I do understand. Yes, we're putting a lot of green spaces in there. And I did actually speak to one of the architects that came to the last planning meeting. I said, it's all very well putting green spaces in there, but we all know that residents find the nearest route, and you put a lawn in there, they're going to walk across the lawn and you're going to be left with a mess. So to me, they need to look at that space and think, how are we going to stop them from taking the quickest route? Do we want a scrutiny on the town centre or the P21 project?
If I can just add to my previous contribution, I would prefer to have a scrutiny on the P21 project, given the amounts of money involved in in taking that project forward.
Do you think it would be better to have a member briefing on the P21 project rather than us scrutinising it, because we've really got nothing at the moment as such as to scrutinise, because there's nothing there? So do you think we'd get more information from a member briefing?
Sorry. Yeah, the idea of the member briefing would be to give you the initial information that you required. Then if you wanted to go further with it, at that point, then you could take it further. But the member briefing would probably cover all if we got a list of the key things that you want to identify in. It's not a public meeting, it's a member briefing. Thrash it out at that point, and then if you still want to take it further in detail, you'd be able to itemise that at a member briefing, and then we could take it further through scrutiny if necessary. It's just an option.
No, that does.
It's a proven good one in the past. Sorry,
that does sound like a good way of taking it forward. If we're going to be covering issues like the purchase of the two properties, demolition costs, and the costs of reinstating the area and the plans for that area, including some of the environmental aspects that you've referred to, Madam Chairman, I'm satisfied with that.
Councillor Pryke.
I know from conversations with other members, and I don't know whether they're CNC members or not, but they're not here tonight, that there are ongoing concerns about the town centre buildings, and in particular the turnover of the shops, the ones that are long-term empty. How many shops have been empty for more than 12 months, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. Also about the pretty vague plans to encourage owners or tenants to convert shops into residential property, and to encourage owners, tenants, whatever, to let people inhabit the upper floors above shops, particularly Marketplace. It's often remarked that you walk down Marketplace and there are no lights on upstairs in the evenings because they're just not used at all. So there are some concerns about the town centre, which I think we could look at, and it probably needs to be a joint scrutiny.
Thank you, Councillor Pryke. We've had problems with, only looking at the past, with empty buildings in this town centre for a long, long time. I think part of the problem is that they're not owned by local people. They're owned by pension companies, and they're not too bothered what they do with them. The money's in there, and that is one of the issues in the town. How about a task and finish group on the town centre if you are looking to discuss matters of the town centre?
If we were to go down that route, would we be able to get representatives or call representatives from the pension funds to come and give evidence to us?
You can ask them, Councillor Gilbert.
in that case, I mean, that sounds like a good way forward. We can ask them, and if they don't turn up.
I think the thing is, Councillor Gilbert, it's such a vast scope. I recognise what Councillor Pryke has just said. P21, a member briefing, that's fine. That will cover that and keep that together. We did a town centre one years and years ago, and I can remember doing it, and it's all encompassing. So if you do a TNF, you can sit down with the group who are interested, thrash the scope out to start with. You can get rid of what you don't want, identify what you do want, and take it from there. It saves it coming through committee. It'll come through committee at the end with your report that you do. But as against a member working group, which is quite a quick review, 2 or 3 meetings, this will obviously need more than that. And you'll also get officer support and clerical support for it as well. So I think purely by the nature of what it is, some aspects you might not be able to look at, some you might. So sit down for the first briefing, scoping paper, go through it, get the officers in that's involved and see what can and cannot be done. I think that would give you a lot clearer steer. Sorry. You okay with that, Christian?
Councillor Pryke.
I recall when we had the car parks working group earlier in the year that we briefly touched on the matter of shopping and the attractiveness of Boston for shoppers and the relative attractions of other places, particularly Spalding, and how it appeared that some people are voting with their wheels and going elsewhere for shopping. And a town centre task and finish group would almost certainly cover that as well, or should cover that subject as well. And we're not going to solve the problem as a task and finish group, but I think we need to know where we're at. I don't know how many empty shops we've got. I don't know how long they've been empty, and I don't know what exactly we can do to get them back into use, or what measures we can propose for that. So
the advantage of a task and finish is that we get full officer support. With the working group we did on car parks, we didn't have full support, did we? We'll have that with the task and finish.
Councillor Austin.
Well, I don't like sort of having this defeated attitude, but pension funds, people in their ivory towers, they see, oh yes, marketplace, what a fantastic location, but they forget what, that they don't think about what is realistic price-wise to here with low wages. And as regards Spalding, everyone says, oh yes, you can shop in the town centre. Hang on, what about Springfields? That's no different, you see, from everything that we're now getting in, shall we say, in the wider Tesco area. We have to be a little bit more realistic, but maybe somebody will have luck sometimes, and you'll strike gold.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. I'm with you on that, and I think Spalding Town Centre is probably as decimated as Boston, because the shopping has gone to Springfields, and if you go to where our BMM site on the centre, the outskirts of our town is on a Saturday, you can't get parked there. But anyway, let's set up a task and finish group. We're looking for about 6 people. We will offer it open to members on C&C as well. Who would like to be on this task and finish? Well, there's 5. So yeah, there's some of them on C&C. So Ralph, David, Suzanne, Mike and Neil. And probably you want 7, do you? Or do it an odd, or
no. What I'll do is I'll email. Keep it clear we are live. I'll email around tomorrow to all the other scrutiny members and offer them the chance to partake should they wish. And then once I've got final decisions back, I'll let you all know. What will happen then is we'll schedule a first meeting with the relevant officers where you can sit behind closed doors and thrash it all out and identify what you want, what is doable, what's not doable, and it takes it out of the committee ring. Okay, is that all right? Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. That's excellent news. I think you can, like Karen said, you can sit behind closed doors and thrash it out. Thank you all for attending this meeting this evening, and I'd like to wish you all a happy Christmas and a happy New Year, and look forward to seeing you in February. Thank you.